Good evening, I'm meteorologist Kit Cloninger. We once again have cut in here for some severe weather. We have meteorologist Tim Jones out in the field. We're looking right now at radar, though. We do have a line of thunderstorms moving into the Hastings down to Red Cloud corridor along Highway 281. So this is warned for up to 70-mile-per-hour winds. And as I said, meteorologist Tim Jones is right now on Highway 6 just to the west of Hastings, and he's already starting to see some of those very high winds. So I want to go ahead and bring in Tim Jones. Tim, go ahead and tell me what you're experiencing right now as these winds come in.
Yeah, Kid, I'm westbound on Highway 6. I just passed Adams Central where that roundabout construction is. And if you bring up reflectivity, there's that gust front out ahead of the precipitation about 4 or 5 miles. And so I just hit that as I was westbound going past Adams Central High School. So now I'm about a quarter to a half mile west of there. So I'm in between that gust front and getting closer to the precipitation core. What this means for the city of Hastings is the stronger winds out ahead of the storm, the actual storm itself, are going to start moving into Hastings here in the next 30 seconds to about 2 minutes from west to east. So that is not the worst of the storm here. What's going to start coming, the winds have already shifted from the southeast to the west now. So just off to my west, Kid, of about 3 miles is the worst of the storm here, and it looks like from my vantage point looking at velocities that we're looking at least off the surface, winds potentially as strong as 65 to 75 miles per hour. So that's probably correlating down to the surface at least 65 miles per hour at the surface, Kid. So what I'm going to do is go for about another half mile, find a safe place to turn around. That I'm going to actually be in the city of Hastings as these storms come through, and then we'll report back live as the storms are going through Hastings and any damage that hopefully doesn't unfold in the next 10 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. So we're looking at some of these storms around the area, so I want to go ahead and bring back up the radar here on the image, and we'll actually take this at the cue wall here in a moment, Joe, if you could, please. But looking at the severe thunderstorm warning here around the Hastings area, that is until midnight tonight. So we still have another half hour on this warning. But Tim was mentioning that he was experiencing a gust front. So that is coming out ahead of the line of storms here. And as we pause this, you can actually see this very weak line right here just coming into the West Hastings right now. You're likely seeing a lot of dust if you live there around the Highway 281 junction with Highway 6 right there in Hastings. So dust, debris possibly getting blown into the area. Winds probably gusting around 40 miles per hour with that initial line. Behind this here, though, from Kennesaw up to Rosedale, Roseland, this is the area that's under the next threat for the precipitation to come through, which is going to bring in the very high winds with that as well. So I want to step off so I can bring up those velocities here. So we can sort of investigate what some of these winds are looking like right now, because we are seeing some of those blue to teal colors on the velocities, and that does indicate that we could be seeing winds in excess of 50 to 60 miles per hour. Those teal colors I'm talking about is right here behind Kennesaw. So Kennesaw, you're likely going to be seeing very high winds very shortly. Go ahead and stay inside interior room if you have any trees around especially. And then all right here down the Highway 74 in western Adams County here up to the Roseland area. Between Roseland and Highway 281, there's not a whole lot in the way of precipitation right now, but we will be seeing this high wind continue into this area. So this is warned for 70-mile-per-hour winds. North of there, though, Grand Island has likely already seen gusty winds, probably 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts coming into the town right now. Very close behind it, though, we see Caro's been seeing some very heavy rain already. Close behind it, we've got those high winds and possibly very heavy rain as well. Hail, fortunately, is not a risk with these storms right now, but I want to go ahead and pull up the velocities on this as well so we can see a bit of this. So we're getting an update here, so the colors are a bit off, but higher into the storm here is a bit concerning because we see this cluster of very high blue colors. So these blue colors do indicate a wind gusts upwards of 70 miles per hour, possibly up to 80 miles per hour in the parent thunderstorm. That's not quite at the surface like we're seeing farther south, which is a little lower to the ground there near the radar. But if we have very heavy rain, which we do, sometimes this can mix down. So I'm going to check and see if they have updated this warning, because the last I saw it was only warned for 60-mile-per-hour winds, but that could possibly update to higher winds right now. So that's until 11:45 tonight for that severe thunderstorm warning there around the Grand Island area. It's still only warned for 60-mile-per-hour winds, but as I said, sometimes that can be updated. I want to go ahead and bring in Nuckolls County and down to Jewell County, Kansas. This is a new severe thunderstorm warning that was just issued here for that area. So putting on that information, that's until 12:15 here. And we are looking at the threat for small hail. It's not the main threat. The main threat is the 70-mile-per-hour winds, which are likely to come through that area. So also seeing just north of that here, we see there on that side of the screen, a new severe thunderstorm warning for Hamilton, York, Geneva, Clay County. So York, Waco, that area east of town will likely see this storm complex that's heading into Grand Island right as we speak. That will be developing here shortly. And you can actually see out ahead of this line of storms, we have sort of another line of storms that's just developed within the last 15 minutes or so. So this sort of snaking line of thunderstorms is the main thunderstorm threat that we're looking at, but we're also seeing a few more storms developing out ahead of this. So this could be affecting the Lincoln area, and just because it's forming right now, some of the models didn't actually pick up on anything like this. So the Lincoln area could be under threat for the thunderstorms fairly soon tonight. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that as well for our neighbors out to the east. But the imminent threat right now is for the Grand Island area as it's coming in right at this minute. Let me step off and see if I can drop back to the warning for the Grand Island area here. So this is the warning for the Hastings area. Hastings likely going to be seeing those winds pick up fairly shortly, but Grand Island certainly starting to see very high winds, which if I can pull up quickly my Grand Island Skycam here, we will actually be able to see those winds already coming into Grand Island. So I'll pull that up right now. I'm looking on a live feed, and this only updates every quarter second or so, and so you can see some of those the rain droplets getting blown there. So we're looking basically due west right into the parent thunderstorm right now, and very high winds shaking the tower. I can see it on the live feed over here. Very strong winds up there on top of the Yancey building in downtown Grand Island. So if you are in Grand Island, be sure to be staying inside right now. Head to an interior room in your home, especially the lowest level of your home. That's where you will be safest. As the storm continues on towards Hamilton County, we'll likely still be seeing those winds accelerating. In fact, this severe thunderstorm warning for Grand Island is still only set at 60 miles per hour, but we're expecting it to increase to 70 miles per hour once it gets into the Hamilton County, York, Clay County, Fillmore County area. So that has been updated to 70 mile per hour winds. So this is what the threat has been expected to be over the last several hours through this evening and even all the way back to this morning. 70 mile per hour winds likely with this. So that can do some extreme widespread damage. So we'll likely see a lot of trees down in the Grand Island area. We might start to see some power flashes, some flickers, maybe some outages with this, especially right there in town as we see that begin to move into the area. So if I can back up a little bit here, I might need to add that graphic, but we'll likely be seeing very high winds moving into Grand Island at this very moment. Yeah, that's exactly what we're seeing here. So as I mentioned a moment ago, we're looking at a little bit higher into the thunderstorm than other representations show, a little bit farther south around the Hastings area. But This is a point of concern as we're looking at these purple colors here. Those are winds in excess of 70 miles per hour. We have the color table set up like that so we can see whenever we have clusters of extreme winds, and that's exactly what we have here. So right around this area, that sort of teal color around this is the severe threshold of 70 mile per hour or 60 mile per hour winds. Higher than that, very strong winds moving into Grand Island right now. So you all need to be in your homes at this moment. Additional warnings that we have in our viewing area for parts of Smith County, Jewell County, and even into Nuckolls County right now. This is until 12:15 tonight, so that's also for high winds up to 70 miles per hour. So we've got several of these warnings around the area. I want to jump back to the one around the Hastings area. So you've likely seen almost all of Hastings is probably past the Showboat 281 bypass there, just on the east side of town. That's that gust front ahead of the storm. We'll pause it right here. You see right here around the Adams Central area, already starting to see the very heavy rain. Those winds are going to be just behind the lip of those rains coming through. So we'll likely be seeing that very shortly. If you are watching here in Hastings, you want to go ahead and be inside, be in the, like I said before, the middle room of your home and on the lowest floor of your home as well. Blue Hill already seeing some very heavy rain at this moment. Starting to come across that 281 corridor now. So I want to see if we have meteorologist Tim Jones, because I can see his feed in the set back there. And I'd like to see if, Tim, if you're listening, if you can give me a report real quick on what you're seeing with those winds.
Yeah, Kid, I'm here. I just turned westbound on 12th Street, so I came up Marion. So I'm on the north side of what used to be the old shopping mall. So the wind's just picking up here on the west side and the northwest side of Hastings. So I'm just slowly meandering off to the west on 12th Street. Of course, if I kept going west another 7 miles, I'd end up in Julietta. So this is where I'm going to intercept the storms here. So it looks like the precipitation's just about a mile to my west here. So if it's moving to the east at 40 miles per hour, it's going to be here in just over a minute. So right now, just passing the old Village Inn building, and of course the airport's on my right. As I turned, when I was northbound on Marion, turning to go west here on 12th Street, you could kind of just pick up before you took my streamer, just when you did, if you kept going north on Marion, where it turns into gravel on the east side of the airport, some of that dust blowing around, which isn't overly all that phenomenal in terms of, you know, the dust blows every day here. But again, we're just getting to the very initial stages of these strong winds. Even though the gust front came through, as you mentioned, and is through Hastings to the east side, the worst is still yet to come in terms of winds. As I just passed Sycamore here on my left, so now just coming out of the Hastings city proper, and so I'll be in a little more rural area right now. So I'm going to find a spot to go ahead and pull over, and we'll let the storm overtake me here. We're going to get some strong winds here coming in, I would say in the next 30 seconds to a minute, as the precipitation is just coming hit me right now as I approach the intersection of Highland and West 12th Street. Most people here in the area know where I'm at. So what we'll do is I'm going to turn left here on Highland and face to the south, and that ought to give a pretty good perspective from right to left with these winds. I'll find a safe place to pull over. Looks like I can do it here. And when I turn on the bigger light on top of the chaser, it ought to give a real good perspective here of the wind and the rain blowing, which I think you can see pretty well here on the chaser kit. If you need to update radar and keep my stream up, go ahead and I can report back as things unfold.
Yeah, Tim, I am going to drop back into radar here, because just listening to the studio here, I can hear some winds starting to knock around some of the dishes we have on the roof. So the winds are already here, and I'm going to ask my producer, Joe, if he can pull up the Grand Island sky view. I've put it in the bottom of the rundown. If we could look at the Grand Island camera, as we can see a very clear picture on that. We'll have that up shortly, but I want to go ahead and pan right or zoom right into the Hastings area, because those winds and the rain are coming in fairly strong right now. Looking north to Grand Island, you can see very heavy precipitation around the Alda area, down to Wood River as well, all along that Highway 30 corridor. Very intense rain right now. And if we look at the lightning as well, some pretty frequent lightning with this storm. So you're looking right now at the Grand Island's live view, and just watching how the winds are shaking around the camera so intensely. So this is why you need to be in your home right now, because we could be seeing winds possibly even in excess of 70 miles per hour, especially here on top of the Yancey building there in downtown Grand Island. So looking at the radar once again, we do have that warning that's been extended all the way out to York and Geneva even. So that's for York County and Fillmore County. And that new warning is until, I believe it's 12:15 tonight. So it's still going to be progressing very quickly through the Tri-Cities area now. Looking back at velocities, we can see that area of some very intense winds have actually moved into the Doniphan area and will likely be moving into Trumbull very shortly. So just rocking back and forth, you can see that we had those very intense winds between Alda and Grand Island, and then they dropped south into the Doniphan area and will likely hit the Trumbull area within the next couple of minutes. So since this is winds possibly in excess of 70 miles per hour, that is significantly severe. So we do apologize if we are interrupting your show, but we do want to stay with this to keep these people safe who are going to possibly be threatened by this wind. So this is the area that I'm looking at right here between Doniphan and Trumbull. So we'll likely be seeing an update on radar shortly. But I want to go ahead and drop down to the Hastings areas. That's already starting to come into the majority of western Hastings, and we'll be moving into eastern Hastings very shortly. Looking towards the Glenville area, though, you've already seen that first gust of wind. And if you notice, we see that it's just updated right here to the north side. We see a very short gap between this outflow and the beginning of the rain. If this was farther out, like if it was already at Clay Center, that would be a sign of it weakening. But it's still fairly close to this line of precipitation, so that's definitely showing signs that it is still very strong and very intense. So I want to go ahead and bring back meteorologist Tim Jones. I see that he's still got a good view of the rain and of some trees out in front of him. Tim, what are you experiencing now?
Well, I turned around and came back to the east, so I'm right by Innovative Prosthetics and Orthotics, and that's the old Village Inn building, I think, here. So I'm across the street is the Hastings Airport. So my view is to the north-northwest. So obviously the winds are coming from left to right on the screen and just starting to pick up ever so slightly. So my intention for parking here was to give a little perspective, not only with the sign, but also with this tree. Now this is a smaller tree, so as these winds come in here about 65 to 70 miles per hour, this tree is going to bend pretty easily here, which you can see. Now I've got one of the top lights on for Storm Chaser 5 that really illuminates the scene. If I turn it off, the tree is not as visible, so you're going to get the rain with it. Now, as I look at my my in-vehicle radar here, I'm kind of sandwiched in between two pockets of stronger winds, one being just to my northwest and another to my west and southwest. So it looks like Hastings is kind of in between, where some of the stronger winds coming in are still off to the west for a few miles. So again, I also have this building to my left here off camera that's could be blocking the winds a little bit. But again, you can see the winds picking up here. I'm estimating right now they're about 40. Now they're starting to pick up. Right as I estimate 40 to 50. Now they're excess of about 50 miles per hour. As you can see here, is now the worst of this storm is starting to come in now. Now we've got some gusts picking up about 55 to 60. So we're not quite severe criteria, Kit, but we're right on the threshold of seeing these winds becoming severe criteria. So I'll leave this up and continue to monitor this, but you might have some more updates with the radar. If not, I can keep kind of telling the story, but why don't you jump back in, Kit?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. So let's go ahead and just reset and head back to the radar, and we'll see sort of just a wider view and go ahead and get a little bit more perspective on some of these thunderstorms. So we've been following this threat for severe weather over the last couple of days for today, and this morning it started to increase that likelihood, and we do have a severe thunderstorm watch out for much of our eastern viewing area until 5 a.m., including central Nebraska here. So that does include the Tri-Cities area. Of course, once these storms move through, that threat will greatly diminish, but that's still going to be well over an hour from now. Lincoln, you are under the threat for severe weather later on tonight as well, so we'll be covering that shortly. But let's go ahead and take a look here in Hastings, as we do see that line of storms has already passed through the Hastings area. So Kennesaw, you're sort of on the back edge of the most intense rain now, so things will start to improve for you in Kennesaw. The worst is over for you. Roseland, you still probably have about another 5-10 minutes of very heavy rain. The winds should still be fine, but we're looking at the area around Glenville down to Deweese, Fairfield eventually within the next 10 to 15 minutes more than likely. Lawrence already seeing some very intense winds more than likely moving through, as well as the Trumbull area here in northwestern Clay County. We'll be looking at very high winds moving into that area here shortly. So we've seen this moving through very quickly. It's crossed the whole breadth of the county of Adams County right now. And I want to go ahead and bring up meteorologist Tim Jones' view just to see what he's looking at. We can see some very intense winds already moving in. Tim, what are you experiencing?
Well, now our winds look to be out of the northwest. I'm back eastbound on 12th Street. So what I want to do is go down 12th here. I'm coming up to the stop sign, if you can see it here at Marion. So to my left is the airport. To the right, if I go right or south on Marion, that would take me down to the middle school. And of course, if I keep going straight, which is east, that's going to take me to Burlington. And that's where I'm headed, because I want to see how the old trees, the oak trees, and the other trees lining the street here are faring in these winds. But moderately severe. I'm experiencing some winds that are just around the 60 mile per hour threshold periodically, but I want to say that I have not experienced anything yet, Kit, that exceeds 65 to 70 mile per hour winds thus far. So that's good news, but again, some of those stronger winds now are starting to come in into the Hastings area from the west. And you can see just some very small tree debris in the street, but I'm not seeing any damage as of yet. So I need to turn my overhead light off because I've got a truck on my left here, so I don't blind him. But again, as I proceed to the east, I don't see any damage thus far, which is great news, Kit.
All right, thank you, Tim. I wanted to point out one thing that I've just noticed on radar here, though. Looking at Baltimore Avenue, just down to 12th Street, sort of around the area that Tim is in, we see a couple of these dark blue pixels, which I've mentioned a couple of times tonight. That's 70 mile per hour winds within the storm, maybe not at the ground, but within the storm, and very heavy rain could bring that down to the surface. And so that means that we've also got 60 mile per hour winds around this area here in or in northwest Hastings. So likely going to be seeing some very intense winds here shortly across the area. But more of note is around the Trumbull area, a large cluster of those very intense winds that the radar has just updated, moving them a little bit farther into Clay County here. So between Trumbull and Inland right now, we have some very intense winds likely beginning to mix down. The warnings right now are almost all warned for 70 mile per hour winds, which we've seen verified from some reports across the area. Looking at the Hall County storm that's already moved through very quickly, still some very intense rain here on the south end of Grand Island. So this is Highway 34, so that should be right around the South Walmart area there in Grand Island. Very heavy rain. Likely with that, you're also getting some very fast winds this evening. So Once again, around the Trumbull area, eventually moving to Harvard. Later, it will be moving towards the Clay Center area. So this is taking almost a due southeast trajectory. So since it's around the Trumbull area, it'll likely be in the Clay Center area within the next 20 minutes or less, as it may accelerate itself out ahead of the rest of the storm. Looking at the wider view of this severe thunderstorm warning, again, it's for until 12:15 tonight. So fairly long warning here for parts of our area. So I'll break down some of these counties for you if you can't read it. This is Hamilton County, already moving through the Aurora area. Will eventually, it's probably already past the Phillips area as well. El Dorado will be coming through very shortly. Like I mentioned, Clay Center fairly shortly, all the way down to Edgar, the Davenport area, up to Geneva there in Fillmore County. Not all of Fillmore County is included in this, so the Bruning area not within that warning. You go up the highway, though, up to York County, York, Waco, other places, McCool Junction, all going to be within that warning. So 70-mile-per-hour winds. I can hear the winds whipping around the tower now here, just around the dot there of the eye in Hastings. But very intense winds, 70-mile-per-hour winds, can bring down large trees. So you do want to stay within the middle part of your home to stay away from any windows or walls, because I could be seeing that risk with that as well. So looking just a little bit farther south here around the Superior to Nelson area here in Nuckolls County, we're starting to see this new, this continued line of storms moving into that area. So Superior, Nelson, you've likely already seen the first gust of wind coming through. Like I've been saying, that sort of has been around 30 to 40 miles per hour with a lot of dust with that. That's why we're seeing this. That's a lot of bugs and dust being picked up by that storm. Behind it is all of the rain, so you likely only have a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and send it out to Tim. Tim has something to add here.
All right, so I'm northbound on Baltimore here, just north of 12th Street. So, dude, I've seen just very small tree branches on the road on 12th Street. We just had a gust that well exceeded 60 miles per hour. So, again, right about the time you tossed to me, things backed off just a little bit. But, again, as I'm going through some of these streets, and I'm just approaching the bowling alley now, just ahead of me on the right, I don't see any tree damage, but again, getting some gusts that are exceeding 50 to 55 miles per hour. That's just below severe criteria, but I have experienced in the last few minutes some severe criteria winds. But the good news, Kit, at least in this part of town, I'm not witnessing any tree damage. I'm going to safely turn around and head back to the south. In the meantime, I'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you, Tim. We're looking at that area around Hastings where Tim is. So he said Baltimore and 12th Street. So right here in West Hastings is where he was experiencing those winds, meeting that severe criteria. Remember the last time we dropped back from Tim, we had one of those blue pixels right there around that intersection. So we likely saw that wind mixed down. So we can almost say with at least some good faith that the inland area is also experiencing those very intense winds. Now here at the station, we are right around this area here next to the National Weather Service. There's a little bend in the road right there. So we're already hearing here at the studio the winds whipping around. I checked the tower camera. We can see the curtains of rain there as well. So very likely we're seeing some of the high winds here on the north end of Hastings. We see here, though, around the inland area, some of those blue pixels have disappeared. So I'm curious if that's possibly mixed all the way down to the surface. So the area around an inland might be seeing some very intense winds very shortly, if not already right now. So looking up in Grand Island again, it's mostly moving out of your area. Some of that heavy rain there around the South Walmart and Locust Street has already lifted to the north and east a little bit. But looking back down to the southeast a little bit more, we'll head back to right where we were when we left off. But this storm system is moving into the El Dorado. I'm going to zoom in here on Hamilton and Clay counties so we can get a better view of this storm system as it's moving in, because we've seen sort of a notch in these outflow boundaries, which have sort of converged there onto the Harvard area. So Harvard to Sutton will likely be seeing some very intense winds with this as well. So you can sort of see earlier it had more of a sharp angle. Now it's beginning to flatten. That means that we've got a gust of wind that's pushing it forward ahead of the line itself. So we saw there around the Trumbull area. I'll go ahead and pause this so that we can get a little more understanding of this storm as it's immediately heading into the Harvard and Clay Center area. So it's probably no more than 10 minutes ago. I was saying it'd be probably 20 minutes before this got to the Clay Center area. So it's accelerating itself. That's where we saw that intense blue spot there of the high pixels of very fast wind. So it's pushing itself ahead of its normal motion right into the Harvard area. So you can hardly even see the outflow boundary here ahead of this line of storms. So this is still a very intense line of thunderstorms which will last. They will continue to progress beyond this warning since it's still so well put together. Once you get a little bit more distance between the outflow and the storms, it begins to weaken a little bit. Sometimes it can intensify again. So Sutton up to Fairmont, down to Geneva, the Shickley area, down to the Davenport area, all these regions across several counties, about 4 or 5 counties around this morning, are likely going to be seeing the 70-mile-per-hour winds within the next little bit here. So we're looking at, it's 11:56 right now. 12:15 a.m. is when this warning is set to expire here just to the east of the Tri-Cities area. Looking south around the Nelson to Superior area, already starting to get very intense rain. The winds are right behind that as well. Around Mankato, Kansas, there in Jewell County, the winds likely very much coming into your area right now as we speak. Eventually to the Cortland area here in Republic County. So we're going to go ahead and bring back in meteorologist Tim Jones. I think he has some wind damage, it looks like.
Well, it's just minor tree damage, but also, this looks like some kind of kid's toy that's blowing out in the road. But I want to pass along some information. I'm getting a report from a friend of mine that power's out in the northwestern part of Grand Island with some big branches down. I would think that's over by Northwest High School in Grand Island. So wanted to pass that along. Again, the west side of Hastings around Baltimore 12th and back to the mall looks to be clear from what I can see. I've been surveying the side streets on the west side. This is Burlington here, so what I'm going to do is go straight, but it looks like the west side of Hastings, from what I can ascertain, the power's on and everything's okay here, kid. As I'll continue to survey it, I think I'm going to head up to Grand Island and survey any potential damage up there.
All right, thank you, Tim. We're taking a look now and looking for Doppler radar. Like he was saying, relaying that information from his friend, around Northwest High School, some power is out. So I want to investigate some of the velocities that we've seen coming through the Grand Island area. And that's exactly the area we were looking at for this large splot here. This is around 11:30, so just a little bit more than a half hour ago, or just less than a half hour ago. We see this area here of these winds, which according to our color table, that would be in excess of 70 miles per hour. And I want to put a pixel here on the camera just so that we can see how high. So that's wind gusts in the storm of up to 90 miles per hour. That is not at the surface, though. We don't see that quite translated all the way down to the surface, but I can check out if we have any wind reports here. Looks like we have one storm damage report there. From 11:44, power outages in Grand Island, multiple trees down there. So that's likely just around the Grand Island area. There was a thunderstorm wind gust of 71 miles per hour there in Grand Island. So that's at the Grand Island Airport, Central Nebraska Regional. So recorded 71 mile per hour. That's true verification of what these storms can do. We'll get to this new warning here, a very large warning into this area here just to the east of the Tri-Cities. So I'll go ahead and pause that. We'll clear off this. That's the notification we get there. So this is a new severe thunderstorm warning for portions of western Clay County, western Hamilton County, western Nuckolls County as well, and then most of York County, Fillmore County, and Thayer County until 1 a.m. So we had the original warning until 12:15. Now it's been extended another 45 minutes. As I was mentioning, that storm that's moving into Clay Center right now, this area has intensified a few times, and it's continuing to produce. We see that this line is very close to the rain, as is here up to the Henderson and on into York County. So this storm is going to be a long-lasting storm. The reason why we have this hard line here between Fillmore and Saline counties is this is a difference in the National Weather Service offices. So we'll likely see Omaha pick up this area here in the warnings and eventually into the Lincoln area. I'm still keeping my eye on this band of storms here across some of our eastern Nebraska counties here to see if those will possibly intensify and become severe. We'll just have to keep an eye on that. But let's go ahead and take a look at Doppler radar velocities here. And so this area around Superior, I'm going to zoom in. We're looking at the winds now moving away from the Blue Hill radar there behind the Local 4 logo. I'll put that in view. The winds are coming across the radar from the northwest to the southeast here. So on this other side, we're looking at the outbound winds here. So once we get to this orange, that's also 70-mile-per-hour winds there. So we're also looking at some very intense winds there in Superior, Nebraska. Down Highway 8, it looks like we'll see that continue. So definitely going to be something of concern here over the next I believe for the next 45 minutes, we'll likely see the backside of this canceled, as it's until that's until 1 a.m. for that new severe thunderstorm warning. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to just reset ourselves. We're now at midnight here, coming into Thursday, July 9th. So we'll reset. We'll get back into coverage whenever we have more information here on Local 4. But thank you for watching, and we'll be back with more information. Until then, you can see all the information you need at the bottom of your screen. Stay with us.